Russia built hardened shelters in Crimea to protect its jets, but Ukraine just blew the doors off 6 of them. After Ukraine's mass drone strikes on Russian strategic bomber bases in June of 2025, Russia started pouring concrete.
Confidence is high. I repeat, confidence is high.
The thinking was sound. Ukrainian drones had been finding aircraft parked out in the open on aprons and soft hangars exposed to whatever Ukraine decided to send over the horizon. The answer was hardened aircraft shelters, reinforced concrete structures built to absorb a near miss and keep whatever's inside flyable. Well, Russia spent real money building those shelters at Saki Airbase in occupied Crimea. And on July 3rd, Ukrainian drones hit 6 of the 7 at the airbase. Satellite imagery from Vantor published by the Warzone confirmed the damage. The doors on 4 of those shelters aren't closed anymore. They're on the taxiway. A hardened shelter isn't a force field. It's a more expensive place to start a fire. And Ukraine just ran that experiment twice in the same week. Hey friends, Wes here, defense journalist, Army and Air Force veteran. Today we're covering Ukraine's back-to-back strikes on Saki Air Base in occupied Crimea, why the target set matters more than the body count, and what it means that Russia's answer to the drone threat is already getting tested and already getting doors blown off of it. I hate to tell you this, buddy, but you're gonna lose Crimea. It's okay, don't cry. You know, you can pack up and bugger off anytime you feel like it, right? This pain and suffering can be over anytime you want. All you have to do is leave Ukraine. All right, face. Let's get this guy out of here. We're just gonna toss him over there. Here's what everyone's been watching in 2026, the refinery strikes. And I get it, they burn beautifully. Smoke column visible from orbit. Russia's wallet takes a hit. Good thumbnails, clean narrative, easy to explain. Click-through rate is a real metric. Sometimes you need a beautiful thumbnail of a smoking oil refinery. But here's what matters more. Ukraine has spent this year going after Russia's ability to generate air power over Crimea. And that campaign doesn't always produce a photogenic fireball. Sometimes it produces satellite imagery of hangar doors lying on concrete, which is quietly more significant. Russia's airfields in Crimea is the machine that turns parked jets into glide bombs over Ukrainian trenches. Ukraine isn't trying to impress anyone with the footage, it's trying to break the machine. 2 strikes in 1 week at the same airbase against the shelters Russia just built to stop exactly this. That tells you something about where the Crimea campaign is actually going. Saki, normally called Novofedorivka Airbase, is home to the Russian Navy's 43rd Independent Naval Attack Aviation Regiment, which flies primarily Su-30 SM flankers. It's been one of Russia's main aviation platforms in Crimea since the illegal occupation began in 2014. Used for naval operations, strike missions against southern Ukraine, and until recently, as a reasonably secure rear area. But on July 1st, Ukraine's security service launched drones against the airfield's infrastructure, specifically targeting the hangars storing the combat aircraft. Now, the SBU confirmed 5 hits, said preliminary information placed Su-30 and Su-30 SM fighters inside 2 of the targeted hangars, and reported a fire in the hangar where an Su-30 SM was located. It valued each aircraft at $30 to $50 million each, depending on configuration. 2 days later, on July 3rd, the SBU came back. This time, it claimed 7 hangars hit across Saki with Su-30 SMs, Su-30, and Su-24 jets reportedly inside, and said at least 7 aircraft were destroyed or damaged. That same night, Ukraine also hit Hardened Air Base about 30 kilometers inland, striking 2 hangars there, storing Shahed drones and aviation equipment. The satellite imagery from Vantor, reviewed by the Warzone, confirmed what the SBU couldn't show on its own. 6 of the 7 hardened aircraft shelters at Saki were damaged, doors blown off 4 of them, structural damage to several others. The shelters themselves remained generally intact, but intact concrete with no doors, fire damage inside, and potential shrapnel hits on whatever was parked there isn't exactly the safe storage solution Russia built. And here's the part most coverage misses when people talk about aircraft sticker prices. A jet is a demanding, needy machine. It flies because an entire support system gets it airborne, arms it, brings it home, patches it up, refuels it, and does it again by morning. That cycle is called sortie generation, and it's what actually determines how much combat power Russia gets out of Crimea on any given day. A hangar is where the neediness gets serviced. Engines get inspected, avionics get tested, weapons get loaded. All of it depends on mechanics, spare parts, ground support gear, fuel lines, test equipment, maintenance records, and a technician with a dry, protected place to work. Punch holes in the hangars, and you're potentially hitting the tools, the spares, the loaders, and the people who keep the whole thing flyable. Ukraine doesn't need to blow up a $50 million Su-30SM to degrade what that jet contributes to the war. It just needs to make the sortie generation cycle slower, more expensive, and less reliable. Damage the maintenance area, and the repairs stall. Hit the ground support gear, and a perfectly good fighter sits idle. Knock down the air defense coverage around the field, and the next drone arrives with less resistance than the last one. A jet that can't fly today is, for today, exactly as useful to Russia as no jet at all. By the way, I took a photo of what a destroyed concrete aircraft shelter looks like. This was in Kuwait, and the damage was from American bombs punching right through the concrete like warm butter. I'll put it on the screen here. Let me give you the operational framework that explains what Ukraine is actually doing across all these target sets at once, because it's a concept I spent time with in the Air Force. It's called parallel operations, and the key word is parallel. Sequential attacks hit one thing, wait, assess, and then move on to the next. But parallel attacks hit many parts of the enemy system simultaneously. Airfields, fuel depots, radar sites, air defense batteries, rail nodes, ammunition storage, maintenance areas, and command infrastructure all at once, or as close to it as your strike capacity allows. The purpose isn't just destruction, it's system shock. When the enemy has to respond everywhere at once, they can't adapt effectively to any of it. Decisions get made with incomplete information, resources get pulled in competing directions, the whole machine starts running slower and worse. Ukraine's doing this with drones, missiles, and sabotage and special operations, not with the mass of the US Air Force, mind you, but the logic is the same. Logic that drove coalition air campaigns against Iraq, and it works when you can sustain the pressure. Saki gets hit twice in a week. Other Russian air bases get hit that same night. Refineries burn in that same week. Russia can't concentrate its repair and defense response on any one problem because there are too many problems arriving at once. The side that forces the other into reactive mode while it stays in initiative mode tends to win the attrition. Russia's historical approach to aircraft survivability was blunt. Rely on distance, park jets on the apron, trust that Ukraine couldn't reach them, and move on. The sheer size of Russian territory was the defense plan. Ukraine detonated that assumption starting in 2022 and accelerated it with Operation Spider's Web in June of 2025, which sent drones smuggled deep into Russia against strategic bomber bases. Now, Ukraine claimed hits on dozens of aircraft, including at Belaya, more than 4,000 kilometers from the border. Since then, Ukraine has reached Shagol near Chelyabinsk, roughly 1,700 kilometers out. Russia's response was to build concrete hardened aircraft shelters at air bases that previously had open ramps. The theory was sound: reinforce the position, protect the asset, buy survivability through structure. But the problem is that Ukraine's drones have already adapted. Analysts at Defense Express noted that Ukraine's newer systems are chipping away at the protective value of those shelters. The Saki imagery is evidence. 6 of 7 hardened shelters damaged in a single attack. Russia's adaptation created a new problem and only partially solved the old one. Pulling aircraft farther back buys safety at the cost of longer flights, more fuel burned, more wear on airframes, and more pilot rest requirements. Ultimately, fewer sorties generated. Keeping them at Saki behind concrete shelters means the shelters need to hold, and they're not holding perfectly. Either choice costs something. That's the point. This fits directly into the wider campaign I covered recently on turning Crimea from Russia's prize into its most expensive problem. Ukraine has spent the year working the peninsula bridges, the ferry routes, the fuel depots, the radar installations, the air defenses, the ships, and now its airfields. Sevastopol introduced fuel rationing at 20 liters per vehicle in May. The last ferry was disabled in April. The M14 highway is getting hit by drones 160 kilometers behind the front. And now, the airfields Crimea used to project Russian military power outward, ships, missiles, aircraft, well, Ukraine has spent 4 years methodically inverting that into a garrison under constant surveillance that spends its energy defending itself before it can throw a punch. There's one more detail worth noting here because Russian military planners apparently noticed too. The Insider reported that Russian officers recently conducted a command staff exercise called Crimean Alert, wargaming a Ukrainian landing on Crimea. The scenario involved mass drone strikes, long-range precision weapons, naval drones, and high-speed small boats. Not a Normandy-style amphibious assault, but they simulated it because they think it's worth simulating. When Russia's own officers are running defensive exercises about their trophy peninsula, that tells you how the strategic mood in Crimea has shifted. Now, here's a thesis this refinery coverage keeps missing. Oil refineries burn on camera. Airfields bleed in the schedule. Russia's glide bomb campaign, the thing that's been punishing Ukrainian frontline positions for 2 years, depends on a cycle that looks deceptively simple from the outside. A jet takes off, drops ordnance, and comes back, gets refueled, and it gets rearmed, gets inspected, and it does it all again. What actually makes that cycle work is everything behind it. The hangars, the maintenance crews, the ground support gear, the fuel lines, all of that stuff. Ukraine is attacking that machinery behind that bombing. And every shelter door on a taxiway, every maintenance crew that has to stop work because a drone is inbound, every sortie that gets delayed or scrubbed is a glide bomb that doesn't fall on a Ukrainian position that day. Not zero glide bombs, fewer. And in a war being decided at the margins, fewer is what matters. Parallel operations work when you can sustain them. Ukraine's drone production is real and growing, but Russia's air defenses around Crimea are also being reinforced, adapted, and thickened in response to exactly these strikes. Ukraine hit the hardened shelters this week because the open ramp phase already happened. Russia will adapt to this phase too, and Ukraine will need to adapt again. The campaign also depends on strike accuracy that can degrade with improved Russian jamming, and Saki can be rebuilt, re-equipped, and re-sheltered if Russia prioritizes it. But the direction of the campaign is right. Whether the pace is sufficient to meaningfully degrade Crimea's aviation capacity before Russia adapts is an open question, and I think Ukraine can do it. The concrete didn't save Russia's jets. It just made the problem slightly more photogenic. That's it for today, my friends. If this breakdown was useful, please like and subscribe. I cover this stuff 4 times a week here on YouTube, and the algorithm needs the signal. By the way, I write on Medium and Substack, QR code on the screen for Substack or just wesodonnell.com. Those are longer analysis that I can go into a little bit more depth than I can here on YouTube with a 14-minute video. And as always, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.